Is the reign of terror upon us? Let's get more perspective on this with our senior correspondent, David Santos. David, thank you for joining me tonight. Let's begin with this. At the very beginning, there were already reports coming out, although unconfirmed, na baka nga Indonesian nationals ang involved dun sa Holo Cathedral bombing. And then today, there was that surprise announcement from Indonesian authorities. Can you help us trace the events? How did this all come about?
In the aftermath of the Holo Cathedral bombing, syempre tuloy-tuloy investigations. May pre-NP side, may AFP side, and in the process of the investigation, naka-aresto ang ating authorities in Sulu, local personalities they believe could have facilitated itong suicide attacks sa Holo Cathedral.
Kumbaga parang sila yung fixers,
parang ganon.
sila yung guide.
Tumulong sila sa pag-surveillance, guiding basically these foreigners to carry out that particular attack. Now, So
at that point in time, alam na nila na meron talagang tinuturo na isang Indonesian couple.
That's the testimony apparently they're getting from these people na nakausap nila, na interrogate nila, na nakausap nila, na investigate nila, and the information that they're getting that Indonesian couple nga. The problem is, wala talaga silang way to know yung identities nitong mag-asawa. Nagkaroon ng mga remains na pina-DNA testing nila, but the problem is there's no way they can compare this to other samples of DNA. So parang tipong nagka-dead end sa investigation on that part until for a time nga nagkaroon ng development with this breakthrough, itong pronouncement ng Jakarta Police.
Which, like we saw earlier in George Cahilas's report, confirmed at welcomed by the Philippine National Police through the Chief PNP, General Abayalde. And we're going to be speaking to the someone from the Army, si Lieutenant General Cirilito Sobejana, a little later on in the program. But so before that, David, so at that point, may holding sila, hindi nga lang nila masabi na totoo nga, and now we get this confirmation. Of course, while all this was happening in the background, nagkaroon naman ng Indanan bombing.
Yeah,
and that was a little bit medyo paano to, in your face na.
Months later, exactly I think 6 or 7 months later, noong June 28, nangyari nga itong suicide bombing naman sa kampo ng Army sa 1st Brigade Composite Team. At apparently, lumalabas na Filipinos nga ang nasa likod nito. In fact, lumantad ang isang nanay, claiming the severed head of one of the suspects na eventually na-identify ng military as a Norman.
And at that point, ayaw pa nating maniwala na Filipino national ba yan? Because that would have been and is the first
recorded case of a Filipino suicide bomber. So eventually he was identified. He was 23-year-old Norman Lasuca. Apparently he left home when he was just a teenager, 18 years old, in 2014. Hindi na alam ng family where he went since then until recently nga nung nangyari itong bombing, and then pictures came out. The mother said that is my son, Norman Lasuca. And doon na nag-evolve. But eventually, pero Pia, yung Sulu front nung itong mga attacks na ito is just the first, rather the second and the third. We must remember that there was also the first time, recorded also suicide bombing incident in the south, in Lamitan, Basilan. Now, authorities have arrested a suspected Abu Sayyaf bomber who may have links to a suicide attack in Basilan that I was mentioning. That was about a year ago. Isnaji Hasim was arrested in a joint police and military operation in Zamboanga, Sibugay this morning at around 9 o'clock. Now, Hasim accordingly was among those who facilitated a suicide bombing attempt in Lamitan City last July 31st in 2018. The suspected suicide bomber, identified only as a Moroccan national, was killed when the explosive he was bringing in his car prematurely went off in a military checkpoint. Now, 9 other people were killed in that incident. The Lamitan bombing was the first of 3 suicide attacks recorded within a year. Now, the 2 others, or of course, as we've been mentioning, Pia, the bombings at the Holo Cathedral in January and an army camp in Indanan last month. The military in the region says it is monitoring at least 7 other foreign terrorists now in Mindanao. Western Mindanao Command Chief Lieutenant General Cirilito Sobejana says these foreigners are training homegrown terrorists to carry out more suicide attacks.
Medyo matagal na rin po na nakapasok ito, pero hindi po natin ma-determine kung anong taon na nakapasok po ito. Kung kaya patuloy po yung ating pagsaliksik ng mas malaliman po upang sa ganun nga ay malaman po natin yung personality identity itong 7 mga foreign terrorist group na talagang yung pakay po nila is to train itong mga local terrorist group dito po sa area ng West Pincope.
Now, the Western Mindanao Command says it is continuously intensifying its intelligence operations to track down these both the foreign and local terrorists, Pia.
Yeah, so we have that, everything seems so, well, to use a very simple word, parang very scary. No?
It is.
Because we have suicide bombings happening, 2 of them in Sulu. We have different attacks going on in different areas. No? And then you have the foreign nationals. You have this announcement from out of the blue, 7 foreign nationals. Sinabi ba nila how long have they been in those areas? What are they doing there? So parang nakakabahala. No? We have that open, it's like an open wound. No?
It is. No less than the President and the Defense Chief, both of them acknowledging that this is a serious concern now in Mindanao kasi nga this is like leveling up the security threat to our country. Remember from the terrorism na pinauso ng Abu Sayyaf noon, from the bombings to the kidnappings to the beheading, ngayon nag-evolve na siya into suicide bombing, something that we had never heard before here in the country.
And something we never thought Filipinos would be capable of.
Exactly. And that could be factored in when the armed forces and the Defense Department will have to assess again within the next few months whether there is the need to extend again the martial law as the NSA Secretary Esperon had said yesterday.
Well, let's address those concerns also. Some critics, for example, have said, they criticize why extend martial law, baka ginagamit lang daw to terrorism. But this is a real threat. No? Hindi ito made up.
Exactly.
By different quarters. This is a very real threat that is right at our doorstep.
And to put it into perspective, Pia, hindi lang ang West Philippine Sea ang naging concern natin ngayon, no? How we protect our sovereignty, but also we must realize that, as you've been pointing out, this is a real threat in the South. It could happen. It could be brought to other parts of the country. It could happen here in Metro Manila. We must remember, we don't want to sound an alarmist here, pero we must remember nangyari ang Rizal Day bombing sa Blumentritt LRT station, nagkaroon ng Makati City Valentine's Day bus bombing. There was the bombing also of Super Ferry. So there is the possibility na pwede silang makalusot from the south to here in the metropolis. So again, as you were saying, it is a real threat.
And of course, people are wondering, why are we talking about this? Well, that's because Indonesia today, just to remind those who are just joining us now, Indonesia, in a surprise announcement today, confirming that 2 of their nationals were the suicide bombers in that Jolo Cathedral bombing back in January. So David Santos, our senior correspondent for defense, thank you very much for being with us today.